Good morning. Morning, everyone. Morning. We're going to begin our program, so I'd just like to request that everyone to be seated. Is that everyone here? Okay. Okay, good morning. Welcome to the Center for Cyber Physical Food, Energy and Water Systems 30 Years of Democracy Celebration and Reflection Seminar here at Johannesburg Business School. My name is Tata Mugon. Objective for the celebration includes promoting the food, energy, water nexus, identifying food, energy, water nexus, identifying sustainable and integrated solutions, creating awareness about 4IR technology and its integration, highlighting success stories in the local integration, highlighting success stories in the local economic development, emphasizing the role of academic institutions in promoting technology. And then lastly, I would like to encourage everyone to please engage, ask questions, and feel free during our question and answer session. I would like to
people here which I need to recognize up front. But first of all, let me do something that we do at the University of Johannesburg, which is a mark of our identity. At the University of Johannesburg, we always want, everywhere we go, we first want to shine by showing inclusivity. Good morning. Sanibonani, Molweni, Dumelang, Goeiemorgen. I can tell. Just give a clap for yourself. The head of Independent Power Producer, IPP Office in South Africa, Mr. Bernard Magoro. Sir, can you please stand up? Welcome. Thank you very much. And then the former group CEO of Eskom, who cannot be here with us. And you are really welcome to this important event. You are really welcome because these are the kind of events that the faculty really would like to see happening. And of course, this event comes at the point where we are celebrating 3 decades of democracy. And of course, I've actually prepared some notes, as just to try and entertain you as we are busy reflect democracy. This journey can actually be grouped in 3 categories. In fact, in 3 parts. There are basically, of course, 30 years means 3 decades. So there was the first decade. So just allow me to indicate a few achievements which in many of them basically connect to, thank you very much. Many of these achievements basically, that's the country has actually managed to achieve. Now, between 1994 and 2004, these are the key, and this is by no way being exhaustive, colleagues and distinguished guests. This is just a few achievements which are deemed important to actually highlight for the purpose of this constitution.
Can you speak directly into it?
Oh, like this. Constitution.
Can you speak directly into it?
Oh, like this. Thank you very much. Yeah. So the adoption of the Constitution marked an important point, in the journey towards what we call now 3 decades of democracy. It's what we call now 3 decades of democracy. And it didn't end there. We can also mention, it didn't end there. We can also mention in that very same list the launch of the South African Revenue Service. In that very same list, the launch of the South African Revenue Services. And that is also quite something important in the life of the country. The launch of the National Prosecution Authority, and then that was basically we could, for the purpose of this this talk, we can wind up the 10 year of democracy in South Africa by the expression of the government commitment to the UN Millennium Development Goals, about key achievements during that particular period, and forgetting something important that I would like to mention at this very platform. So, starting with the launch of the expanded public works program, this was one of the achievements during that particular period. The unveiling of the comprehensive housing plan, right, for sustainable human settlement, the inauguration of the Southern African Large Telescope, we all know, or we have actually heard about it. So the most important achievement, not really achievement, but something quite remarkable that happened in South Africa during the second decade of democracy was actually the birth of the University of Johannesburg. I don't know how many people in this very audience are actually aware of that. Because when we talk about the second decade of democracy, we're looking at 2004, from 2004 to 2013. And the University of Johannesburg was actually born in 2007. Development plan, and that is again one quite a significant document in the life of South Africa, the National Development Plan, which basically got very much inspired from the SDGs, or the Sustainable Development Goal, and then to actually get to towards the end of this very period, the second decade, of democracy, there was something quite important in terms of energy, which we can actually show the colleague here from the IPP side, exhaustive. We can talk about the launch of the Black Industrialist Scheme. We can talk about the move to address financial exclusion, right, in higher education sector. Some of you will remember what we used to call the Fees Must Fall movement. The revival of the renewable energy independent power producer procurement, right, and that again speaks to the energy sector, the third decade of our democracy. So there are many achievements that we can really mention in the life of these 30 years of democracy, in terms of what the government of South Africa has actually achieved. But how can we link these things to the University of Johannesburg? The University of Johannesburg, like I said to you, was born in the second decade of democracy. And one of the mandates of this university is basically to produce knowledge, just like any other university. But of course, what could be understood in the context of the University of Johannesburg, given its history, and the kind of knowledge that we actually produce, yes, we want it universal, but we actually want to focus this knowledge, to the life and the betterment of South Africa and, of course, the African continent as a benefit. So it is indeed in that context that initiatives such as this, Professor Nulu, I would like to say that up front on behalf of the Dean, initiatives such as this will continue to enjoy the support of the faculty. Because this is very important, as such initiatives are actually meant to produce knowledge. And the knowledge that is produced here should not be, I remember, in fact, the wisdom of one of our former vice chancellors, Professor Marwala, who used to say, knowledge becomes knowledge when it is shared. And of course, in that context, whatever knowledge that comes out of your
Thank you. Thank you, Professor Bukoro. Am I audible? Yes, thank you. Thank you so much. I think you gave us quite a good reflection for the past 3 decades, giving us a bit of insight of where it all began and the journeys that we've been through in our democracy. So I really appreciate your opening remarks, as well as introducing our host, Professor Ngwili. Then next, I would like to welcome Professor Johnny Dladla to introduce our keynote speaker. Professor Dladla is currently a professor of practice at the University of Johannesburg in the Faculty of Engineering and Built Environment. He's assigned to the Center for Cyber Physical Food, Energy and Water.
It's always a challenge with these stands. It exposes some of us that arrived when the Lord had run out of heights. Honored guests, starting with Professor Bukoro, thank you very much for the warm welcome and introductions, and also to acknowledge Professor Nulu, who's my guardian in the Faculty of Engineering and the Built Environment. Distinguished guests, our speakers who are here today to put meaning and definition into today's session, whom I'll introduce later. Colleagues that ties us together, which is food, energy, and water. These are essential triads for sustainable development. The food, energy, water nexus goes beyond mere resource management. It touches every aspect of our daily lives, and it defines our future well-being. At the center for cyber-physical food, energy, and water systems, which it can take quite a lot of my airtime if I continue repeating it. So, and I know that I've got good brains here, so I'll just abbreviate it to a acronym of CCP FEUS, which is CCP FUSE. So if I continue talking about CCP FUSE, don't get confused and get fused into it. So that's what I'll be referring to. So that's the only last time I'll call it in full. Our mission in CCP FUSE is to advance technologies, systems, and knowledge for sustainable management of these essential resources. Through this lens, we not only highlight the interconnectedness of these resources, but also underline the power of integrated solutions. As we celebrate 30 years of democracy, and Professor has eloquently articulated, how he broke it down into different decades, and I'm not gonna repeat and reiterate. Integrating cutting-edge technology, we can bridge gaps and create a ripple effect that strengthens each pillar of the nexus. I could spend the whole day talking about the FUSE nexus. However, I just thought I'll give high-level reasons why we are here today to celebrate what University of Johannesburg has done, not only in South Africa, but having our own ambassador, which is our former VC, Professor Rolla, at the University of United Nations. He carries that torch for us. He pushes quite strongly on the SDG 4, which is the quality of education. So we are here today to really continue carrying that torch and being the bearers of good news. Without much ado, I'd like to then introduce our next speaker. I'm not sure, Program Director, if I'm taking over your role, or if I can just kick off. Well, it's a bit long now. It's no longer recent. But can you hear me? All right. I thought I could take a chance of speaking without a mic. He's the head of the IPP office, and he's a registered professional electrical engineer with more than 20 years experience in various technical and leadership roles within the electricity supply industry. He leads the team at the IPP office, responsible for the procurement of power from independent power producers on behalf of the Department of Mineral Resources and Energy. Prior to joining the IPP office, he was the general manager at Eskom, responsible for systems operations and Eskom telecommunications, where his key role was the management of South Africa's electricity grid. He has been at the helm of the grid operator during one of which was the most challenging times due to the generation capacity shortages. He has also been involved in the integration of various electricity generation technologies into the grid, including the open cycle gas turbines, coal and renewable energy. He holds an electrical engineering degree from UCT, and he also holds a Master's of Business Administration from the Wits Business School. And surprisingly, he's also a law scholar.
So I come from a village. I was born in a village, and before 1994, so I'm revealing my age. So the nexus of water, energy, and food, the moment he mentioned it, then the lights started flashing. And I thought back to my village days. So where I grew up, energy was only available in the form of firewood. Water was a communal tap, which for those who don't know, I know the young people don't know about communal tap, but it's a tap that serves 20 or more households, and you all go and queue there to get water. But the good thing is the tap always had water, always, 24/7. Food, we had a lot of food. We never knew poverty back then. We used to plow subsistence farming. I know very well of this coming season, rainy seasons, we'll be going out to the fields, we plow, and then we'll have enough for until the next season. So just bringing back those memories, I thought this might be interesting. Unfortunately, now I go back to the same village to visit my cousins. The picture has changed. On the positive side, next slide, please. On the positive side, we're all electrified in the village. And that's the one achievement perhaps Professor forgot to mention. So in the last 30 years in South Africa, what you see there, we started with around about 18-20% access rate of electricity. Today we are sitting at 94% as South Africa. So this is a huge milestone. In fact, wherever we mention this, people don't believe it. It's impossible for a country to achieve such growth in access to electricity within a period of 20 years. So we did it, and that includes non-grid installations. So there are programs where it's very difficult and uneconomical to connect people. And what the department does, with the support of National Treasury, they will go and put up the panels and battery for the people to be able to have lights and be able to charge their cell phones. So that program has also been running in parallel since 2002. So that, to me, as an electrical engineer, is a huge achievement. But at the same time, when I drive back to the village, the lights are on, if there's no load shedding, of course. But everyone has a tap in their homes, which is great. Unfortunately, 4 out of the 7 days, there's no water coming out of the tap. Similarly, when I drive around, I don't see subsistence farming anymore. So we've made a lot of achievements on the energy side, and I will share some of those achievements with you. But there is a lot of work that needs to be done on the energy and the water side. So that's the reason I'm here. I'm here for selfish reasons, to understand what UJ is planning to do to address the water and the food, while we are addressing the energy. And I will show you, you're right, Professor, the energy, or NECOM, and the energy recovery plans have been bearing fruit. I can almost tell you, I speak to ESCOM colleagues today, load shedding is almost the thing of the past. But it's actually a reprieve for us to now focus on building more, so that we don't go back to load shedding stage again. The decommissioning of power stations is a reality, and it's going to be hitting South Africa very hard. It's all going to happen around the same time. Between now and 2035, we'll lose 20 gigawatts of coal, which is all dispatchable, and we have to replace that with alternatives. And last month, there was a G20 summit in Brazil, and one of the scary message that came out, but at the same time is an opportunity, is that 40% of the technology that we need to achieve net zero, it's not there. We still have a challenge to find the 40% for us to reach the net zero by 2050. So that technology innovation, and this is a message to students. If you want to start a career in energy, especially the energy transition, you will retire before we solve this energy transition. So that, I thought, it's a best way to start, just looking at the achievement and celebrating this moment that South Africa has achieved. We still have a 6% that we have to deal with. Minister Ramokgopa has committed himself to, and he's committed us to say we need to get that number to at least 97% by the end of this current government. So we have 5 years to increase that by 3%. And why 3%? It's becoming more and more difficult to reach that last customer. Next slide. So the next slide is talking to the Nexus. I didn't know much about this, which is why I agreed to come. But I went to investigate, so what are these WEF Nexus? And that's what I found from the internet. So I said, okay, so we have been playing a part. Next one, so please, if you can click twice. We have been playing a part in addressing the energy space as the IPP office. And we are actually hitting more goals at the same time. We are decarbonizing our grid, because we're bringing a lot more renewables, but we are also addressing the energy security issue. And at the same time, as we'll show you later on with some of the results, as part of our program, our IPPs that sign contracts with us also commit to economic development. And that contract, it's a binding contract for the full 20 years, and the team is involved in making sure that they deliver on those commitments. So I'll share with you those commitments. So I actually realized after talking to Prof. Jaja that we're actually achieving more than what we thought we were doing as the IPP office. Next slide. Next one. So who we are an energy procurer who is an agent of the Department of Energy, or Department of Energy and Electricity now, with the two key mandates: procurement of energy on behalf of government, and we must do contract management to make sure that those service providers that we contract with do deliver on their commitments. Next one. So if you look at the project life cycle, I'm just trying to indicate where we fit in. So any wind or PV project development phases, you have project preparation phase. That's where you acquire land, you get all your permitting, you ask for connection from the grid operator. And then the second phase is procurement, and that's where we come in. So we put together tender documents, agreements that needs to be in place we manage that whole process from tender stage to evaluation to appointment to financial close. And then the next phase is construction, which is mainly the IPPs. Operating and maintenance is mainly the IPPs. We do contract management. And what we also do, to give you some comfort, all our projects have to commit to decommissioning. So there is a requirement for decommissioning fund so that at the end of the project term, which is normally 20 years, 25 years, they don't leave sites unrehabilitated. So we monitor those costs. Every year we do an audit to make sure that budget for decommissioning is in place. So that's basically what we do. You might have to press twice. Yeah. So what we have been able to achieve in the last 14 years that we have been in operation. Next slide. So we have ran 9 bid windows. We have procured just over 13 gigawatt. Of the 13 gigawatt, 7.3 is in operation as we speak. Just over 2 gigawatt is in construction. Another 973 megawatts is leading to commercial close. And then we've got 8,200 megawatts that we are busy currently evaluating. Just to maybe bring some context, South African grid is 30 gigawatts base load, so that makes it easy. But with renewables, you have to multiply by 4. To replace the 20 gigawatt that I spoke about that we need to decommission, we will need at least 80 gigawatts of renewables. So there is a lot of work that needs to be done in the next 30 years for us to reach the net zero. Next slide. This slide is just showing you how, since back in 2013, how much capacity we have been able to, how much capacity we have been adding to the grid every single year through the IPP procurement program. So it works. And we have covered almost all provinces except Gauteng, if I'm not mistaken. So all provinces, we have IPP projects that are currently either in operation or under construction. So it's a huge milestone given that 10, 15 years ago, in fact 15 years ago, most of these technologies were not there in South Africa. We'll share the slides later on. Talking about technologies, these are the technologies that we have brought into the energy mix in South Africa through the IPP procurement program. When we started back in 2011, we had to import all the skills that we needed to put these deals together. Transaction advisors, engineers, developers, all the skills. And Prof. Dladla was part of that early mobilization through his involvement in other industries, in fact, construction, if I'm not mistaken, Prof. But where we are today, we have built an ecosystem that we are able to structure the deals ourselves as South Africans. We have transaction advisor skills across the board, from lenders to legal skills to project finance, economic development, manufacturing, construction. We have built that capacity internally through this IPP procurement program. Today we have, the market has been liberalized, so industries, mining houses are able to procure their own energy. And we still take pride as the IPP office that we were the catalyst of this whole process. So these are the technologies, and they are there. And I will really encourage those who are interested to go and visit some of these sites. It's really mind-boggling to see how South Africa has become a player in the renewable energy space and a recognized player in the renewable energy space. Every now and then we are talking to our African friends, training them, advising them on how best to structure the deals for the benefits of the country. So that's a wind farm. That's PV. I think we're all familiar now with so much commercial and residential rooftop PVs. This is a small hydro, lots of potential throughout the country. We don't have a lot of water, but small hydros, we are able to put those along the rivers. So this one is actually situated, it's Kakamas, it's in the Northern Cape. We have another one in Clarence as well that's in operation. Another technology which we adopted really at an early stage is solar, concentrated solar power. We paid the school fees because when we adopted it was very expensive, but now the price has dropped by more than half. It's a very important technology for us to be able to make up for the base load capacity that we're losing. So CSP, you basically concentrate the sun's heat, you boil the water, and then that steam is the same steam that you get from burning coal. So everything from that point onwards is what you get from a coal-fired power station. So now you're doing it without releasing any CO2 emissions. So it's the one technology that I think South Africa, given where we are and our advantage with radiation, we should, when the economics are right, we should build as many of this as possible. We've got about 500 megawatts of CSP already in operation. There is more. Last 2 weeks, we actually signed our first battery energy storage program. And there is another 3 projects that we're going to sign next month. We are busy evaluating another battery energy storage program. We'll be announcing preferred bidders end of November. And then there's another program in the market. So all in all, we're procuring 1.7 gigawatt of battery in order to manage the transition from coal to renewables. The landfill gas, again, this is one technology that out of all these landfill dumps that we see around the country, we should be building every dumping area should actually have a landfill power plant. Similarly, biomass. So biomass is one of those controversial ones because you don't want people to cut trees to burn to produce power. But we do have a lot of discard material from harvesting the paper plant, from after plantation, sugar cane. So in those areas, there is an advantage to use biomass, and we do have a project in the KZN area that is producing power from biomass as well. Last but not least, recently we have also decided to experiment, and this was first of a kind in the world, where we went out to procure not based on technology, but based on the outcome. So we said we want a plant that can produce power from 5 a.m. in the morning, in time for the morning peak, all the way until 9:30 in the evening, after the evening peak. We were surprised that we found that people were able to design a combination of solar power and battery, a combination of solar, wind, and battery, and they were able to produce power during those 16.5 hours. So this technology is there. Our first project, 150 megawatts, they went commercial in December last year. And we are monitoring them. They are producing power 5 a.m. in the morning. During the day, they produce more, charge some of that power into batteries, and they use that for the evening peak and the morning peak. And this was one of a kind. And since then, there has been a few countries that have developed a similar technologies. And then another benefit out of the program, we have been able to attract investment from basically across the globe, 270 billion rand in the last 15 years. 18% of that is FDI. A lot of local commercial banks, pension funds are invested. Some of your money is probably invested in the IPP programs. And there is really a lot of interest in this program because of the benefits, not only financially, but also environmental benefit that we get out of it. And through that time, we've also been able to reduce the tariffs. On average, if you look at wind and solar tariffs, they've come down by 80% from when we started to where we are today because of the competitive nature of our program. As I said earlier, another important pillar of the program is this socio-economic development aspect of it. So we require all our IPPs to commit to South African ownership. They must commit to black people ownership. They must commit to creating jobs. They must commit to training skills. They must commit to local communities. These projects are sitting in areas where there was no development before, similar to my home village. So you don't want kids and people to just look at that PV farm or wind farm and wonder. So we want to create the relationships between the communities and the projects. And we have been successful to a certain extent. The need is high. The need is huge in a country like ours. We know the challenges with jobs, with skills. But I'm happy to announce that in the last 14 years that the program has been in operation, these are some of the achievements, the jobs that have been created. And we monitor this on a quarterly basis. The amount of CO2s that we have, carbon emissions that we have offset by displacing coal power generation, the local ownership by both black people and local communities, owning about 9% of the projects that we have contracted with, the spending on triple BEE, the savings on the water, again, back to the WEF Nexus. So what made it possible for us to have these achievements? As I started by saying, I want to hear what we are doing on the water side and on the food side. So for me, what made it possible, and as Prof mentioned, I'm now very much interested in the legal space. We have done very well legally on the energy space. This is what drove transformation that we saw in the energy space. Starting with the Constitution, although it does not declare that electricity is a basic human right, but the courts have now extended that right to say, by very nature that you need electricity to give effect or to attain other basic rights, it has the same standing. And then all this legislation, if one looks at them, they actually were key in making sure that we attain those achievements. Starting with the white paper that also started the reform process. We then established a very strong regulator that helps us drove the price to where we are now. But unfortunately, with the need for new investment, the price had to go up. So without going through all of them, but the message here is the legal framework is very key. And I think if one needs to understand what's happening in the water space, this might be an area to start with. What happened in the legal framework of the water management? The other important one, and I decided to stick with the two for me, it's government. We were able to rally government to a point that I don't know if there's any program in the country that managed to achieve this synergy and alignment across all government spheres. All these government departments, so the other side is private sector and communities, but this side, this is all government department. None of our program or project would have been successful if any of this department did not play their part. National Treasury, very, very key. They give us a guarantee, which we now, because the market has matured, we are reducing. And that allowed us to be able to sign contracts rand denominated. And if you see what's happening in the rest of the continent, the countries that also started the IPP procurement program, the currency risk, it's so huge that if you look at South Africa, we started in 2010, the rand to dollar was around 8, 9 rand. We are now at 18 rand. So that alone would have meant that the tariff would have doubled today. So the currency that we forced this, and by the way, there was pressure to sign the dollar-denominated PPAs in the beginning. I'm not going to mention all of them. The regulator, NERSA should be there. Yeah, very key. They've always allowed Eskom to recover all the costs for IPPs. They had played a very critical role for the integrity of our program. Eskom itself, very key in that process. DTIC, we've been working very closely with DTIC to try and bring some of these local, some of these components to be manufactured locally. We haven't done as much as we would have liked to on localization, but now that it's clear where we're going with the program, it's time for us to focus on localization. And localization is beyond just manufacturing. It's a transport, it's a construction, it's the skills to put together those deals. So all of that, we need to make sure we gain as much as possible. South Africa is going to build in the region of 100 beyond gigawatt of renewables. And I'm talking in the next 20 years at least. So it will be sad if 20 years we'll build all of that and we've got nothing to show for it sustainably. So we are going to focus on localization going forward. There is a SAREM, South African Renewable Energy Master Plan document that has been put together by DMRE, and that is going to drive the strategy on localization and industrialization around these renewable projects. So I've sort of indicated where we come from, what we've been able to achieve, but the big question is, what does the future look like? And really, this is not necessarily about the IPP office. The IPP office has a mandate to procure by 2030, 28 gigawatt of capacity. We are scared when we look at that because we've got other challenges. Capacity in the country, transmission grid is our number one challenge. But our work is cut out, and that's why we're saying to the industry, you know that this is going to happen. So what do you have to give South Africa so that at the end of the 10 years or 8 years, we don't just have electricity, but we also have skills, we have industrialization, we have black ownership of these assets. But so the transition is going to happen. So I'm not sure if it's clear. This is where we are, and that's the coal fraction in the mix. And we know for us to reach net zero, coal will have to drop significantly. So this is projected increase in mainly wind and solar and battery. So as the institution, my question as an industry practitioner, what is UJ going to do to make sure that we bring some of these benefits that will come with this transition to South Africa? This picture is showing the amount of projects which we are monitoring that are under development as we speak for renewables. So today, as we speak, there's over 60 gigawatt of projects that are at advanced stage of shovel ready to bid to us, ready to bid to mining houses or any other industrial customer. These are grid scale projects. There are most of them waiting for the grid or waiting for the launch of a program. But most importantly, and that's why I said it's beyond the IPP office, what we're seeing, this picture is coming from IEC in particular, or IEA. There is a shift that's happening where consumers at the end will be producing electricity. So that's a fact. It started, I think some of you already have panels on the rooftop. In Cape Town, you can actually generate power and sell back to the grid. Initially, they say they will offset. Now they actually pay you real money for that extra energy that you're generating back to the grid. And that's what's going to be the future of energy supply in South Africa. We are used to having power coming from Mpumalanga, going to the rest of the country. And now, what we are seeing is that we are having to build 14,000 kilometers of line in the next 18 years. In the next 8 years, because most of the wind and solar production is more lucrative in those areas, in the Cape region. So just to give you an idea, we have 32,000 kilometers of transmission lines today that we built since 1921, when Eskom was formed, till today. So we have to build half of that in the next 8 years. So when you hear there is no transition without transmission, it's a fact, and this is the phrase that has been coined internationally, because every country is struggling with transmission. So the talk now is whether the NTCSA, the transmission company that has been formed, will be able to execute this 14,000 kilometers. There is a lot of interest from private sector through a similar program like what we're running, the IPP, they call it IPT, Independent Power Transmission Model. There's a lot of interest, people that saying we need to also augment transmission if we want to achieve that target. But that is the decision that will be made at the National Transmission Company. But the point here is, it's not just a generation challenge that we have, it's also a transmission challenge. And we don't need one, we need both. If we don't have both of them, we're going to have a challenge. We're going to decommission 20 gigawatt in the next 10 years. And as we speak today, we are not ready. So lastly, I just wanted to share with you the other part of the WEF Nexus that Prof. Klaja made me aware of. So we've been running this program insisting on these economic development aspects. And then we went back to the data, and thanks to Des sitting here, and then we realized, in fact, we've been contributing significantly to the WEF Nexus. What CO2 emissions displaced, water savings, the energy that's coming from the green. And down here, through that economic development pillar, I've just taken some of the few examples of what our IPPs are doing out there to the communities. So what you see here is it's a hydroponic community project, which is in an area called Tosrafir. So there's an IPP there that has helped with 10 million rand from the development initiatives that's part of the program. They have helped the community start this project. And I'm also happy to say this IPP is now 100% black owned by Pele Green Energy, which was also born out of the IPP procurement program. So they started as a partner and they grew to become a standalone. Now they are able to bid on their own. So we've got a few of those stories that we were able to achieve as well in the last 14 years of the program. And this project is now serving Checkers, ShopRite, and other stores in the area. So it's now a sustainable project. And that's the food part of the IPP procurement program. So that's just the same project again. And this is a different one. Sorry, I can't see from here. Oh, so this is the Letu. So again, similar kind of project. IPPs putting money to support the communities to start projects to help themselves. So this is, for me, the most humbling part of the program. Yes, I love electrons, I'm an engineer, but when I go to the communities and I see those smiles from those members of the communities that are now able to feed their communities, that their family members, they're able to supply to the stores their produce. This is the South Africa we want to see. I mentioned that I don't see subsistence farming. This is the story of one IPP that is now even going to homes through the budgets of this SED commitment to train individual households on how to create home gardens. Another IPP supplied this equipment to a farmer in the Free State. Here you can see on the right-hand side, this is how this piggery looked like. And through the intervention of the IPPs, they were able to refurbish that on their behalf. Similarly with sheep farming, this is a very real story of a drought in this area of Amatole municipality. The dam was empty, and through the help of the IPPs, they were able to augment the dam with the water from the ground, and this was the result. Saving lives. So these are some of the stories, and we have actually beefed up our monitoring department to make sure that we maximize the benefit out of this program. So it's not just about energy. In fact, we have changed our motto now. It's beyond electrons. That's our slogan. So in conclusion, thank you for inviting us. Just to summarize, so the last 30 years, for me, the key achievement has been the electrification. I think what we were able to achieve, I studied throughout my schooling days up to matric with a candle. No electricity. And today, we have 94% of the people with electricity. We achieved that through coal, but we know that the world has changed. It was all central blend. We had no choice but to buy from the either municipality or ESCOM. But I think what's going to happen is that going into the future, we have to deal with the energy trilemma. So make sure that energy security is there, make sure that it's affordable, and we must also make sure that it's sustainable. That is our challenge. There is access, there's security, affordability remains a challenge, but renewables, as are shown in the numbers, have actually dropped significantly. We are now, with the department, experimenting on microgrids, and that is going to help with that remaining 6% and achieving that 3% target that the minister has put before us. And then the other thing that I see happening, we're going to continue to decarbonize the grid. There will be a lot of decentralized energy supply. We as the household will be supplying energy to the grid. Electric vehicles will come to South Africa, and we will use electric vehicles for grid management. We will see a lot of batteries, but keeping in mind, 40% of what we need for net zero, we don't have it. And the race is on to find that technology. South Africa has almost all the minerals that we need for the energy transition. So it's how do we utilize universities, industries to maximize on localization. So my last point here is really about localization. That is something that we need to focus on as South Africa. If we're able to do that, in my mind, success will be measured in terms of how well we have done with the water, energy, and food nexus, but also the just energy transition. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Mogora. I think that was a very insightful address. I think it's such a great privilege to have someone like yourself here sharing with us, especially touching on the future vision. And I think that's something that we sort of aligning with ourselves here. But just to touch on, thank you so much. Thank you so much for that. I'd like to introduce Dr. who is going to moderate our first panel. Our first panel is going to be about resource security and integrated management, reflecting on the past 30 years of democracy. So in this panel, we will have Mr. Mogora, and as well as Dr. Dayal on Dr. Dayal on the panel, which we will then just delve in deeper on the discussion that Mr. Mogora has set out for us. So thank you.
Resource security and integrated management, a reflection of 30 years of democracy. And I guess as we gather here today, we have a unique opportunity to dive deeper and more critically into issues that have a profound effect on our sustainability as a nation and as a country as well. So, to guide our discussion today, we have assembled a panel of established and distinguished panelists. Mr. Bernard Mogora was already introduced, so I will go ahead and introduce Dr. Harsha Dayal, who is from the Department of Planning and Monitoring and Evaluation in the Presidency of South Africa, whose expertise in policy development and implementation will enrich our conversation today. So just a bit of a background on Dr. Dayal. She is the Director of Research and Knowledge Management at DPME within the Presidency of South Africa. She has over 20 years of experience in public health and social sciences. Dr. Dayal holds a master's degree in public health from Wits University and is currently pursuing a PhD in development studies. Oh, she's done. I thought maybe she's pursuing a second PhD. She has introduced evidence-based synthesis methodology in the public sector and developed processes to build public sector capacity. Dr. Dayal has served on several advisory and reference groups, including the SDG Knowledge Hub and the Water Research Commission. Thank you. It's such a pleasure to have you. So I guess in the next 30 minutes, we will allow our panelists to share pretty much their ideas or perspectives on South Africa's progress and resource security and integrated resource management, of course, charting the way forward, and of course, the lessons that we can learn. And after the session, we will have a short Q&A session whereby you can actually interact with the experts and as well share your views on what they've presented today. Now, I think, Mr. Magoro, you've already pretty much set the tone quite nicely, and it's quite a common thing now that we understand that there's an increasing global demand for our resources, be it water, be it energy, be it food. And this demand really is driven by a number of issues, such as, growing population, as well as increasing urbanization and consumption patterns. I mean, in Africa alone, we find that our current population of approximately 1.1 billion people, which is set to grow by double the rate in 2050, is already going to present some interesting challenges for the food, water, and energy nexus. Now, in the context of South Africa, and I think Mr. Magoro, you touched on this as well, with regards to food security, although we have some level of food security at a national scale, we still find that 30% of our households in South Africa are actually food insecure. And of course, from a water perspective, we are experiencing water shedding, and as well as energy, there's load shedding, load reductions. So these challenges are already pretty much a reality for the everyday South African in today's world. So I'd like to, with all of this in mind, perhaps Dr. Dayal, to just start with you, how would you assess South Africa's progress in resource security over the past 30 years?
Thank you very much, and thanks for that introduction. I think before I start, I just want to thank Mr. Magoro for giving us this confidence back in state capacity, because all that you've heard this from this keynote speech this morning is to reinstate our confidence, especially after the erosion of our confidence in state capacities. You can see how much of expertise, but also the ripple effect of this capacity. So taking into consideration, and one of the last comments you made is that we're beefing up our monitoring systems. And I think this is the part that I want to bring out, that how would we assess our progress if you take it over the 3 decades, and I will be doing a presentation on that as well, just to say that we cannot measure progress through slices in time, through once-off surveys. It is not enough. And also, it gives a wrong picture. So between all the different measures, the population census survey that happens once every 10 years, and you do see, and you started to say that, how do we measure progress at a household level? What we can see is the big trends, but if you do not feel it at the level of the household, that's the challenge. So for me, it's not about how you measure in big surveys once off at a time. It's this routine, ongoing assessments that almost takes the backstage. It almost takes the back end of what you don't do. But remember, red flags come up when you do this routine work properly. And that's why let's take it from that broader development perspective as to how we do assess, measure, and measure our progress. Because on the one hand, there will always be trade-offs. There will always be other, maybe positive spillovers. Are we measuring that? To what extent? So just to introduce that, interconnectedness is what we need to start measuring better, and our dependencies on each other. And I think also you set that scene quite nicely. For me, it's few the other direction. I mean, now bringing water is the big issue, right? And how much of forecasting and forward thinking did we actually bring into our scenarios as well? So that's another way of measuring, but I think it's still smaller scales than going into, and especially with the energy sector, that we sometimes do retrospective work, but it's this prospective work that's also needed. So let me stop there because there's a lot more to say. Thanks.
Yes, okay. No, thank you for that. I think maybe Mr. Magoro, if you could perhaps add to that. I guess you've already kind of given that background, looking at the numbers where you said 94% access rate as opposed to 20% in early 2000 or the 90s.
I can't remember his name, but I've got his book. And he's the one that actually started. He actually drove to Soweto, and he saw the picture there, and he says, Dr. Koza, we have to change this. Dr. Roel Koza was the chairman at the time. So we have to be intentional. It's not easy, and sometimes, you know, you don't see the results today, but you need to have that vision. And I think that's why I always tell this story of the IPP office, just to show that we have done it, and we can do it. If we now decide in the next 10 years we're going to tackle the water challenge, I have no doubt we'll do it. Create legislation, mobilize the institutions. And I'm seeing, and I'm very encouraged, I'm seeing a lot more private public partnerships coming up in the water space, in other services. And I think it's the right approach that South Africa is taking, because it's clear that government on its own is not going to be able to address all the challenges that we have. There's limited budget, there's limited capacity within government. So private-public partnerships, I think for me that's the way to go. But we have to be careful on how you structure those deals. Like I gave an example of other countries that signed the wrong deals. You can get it wrong. We were lucky that we spent 18 months before we even issued a tender in the IPP procurement program, just making sure that all the agreements are for the benefit of South Africa and the South African community that are involved. So it is possible, but it needs to be planned, and you need to be intentional about it.
Yes, thank you for that. So I think I would like to actually pick up on that a bit later on in the discussion, but I would like to now focus our conversation on the integrated management of resources. Now, it's widely accepted that water, energy, and food securities are intrinsically interlinked and intertwined, and with the usage of a resource within the sector, in one sector, has an influence on the use and availability on the adjacent sector as well. Therefore, they can't really be considered in isolation if you're to look at it in that sense. And you find critics sometimes say we need to move away from a nexus thinking, but towards a nexus doing. So what are the key lessons that we can learn from integration efforts across the food, water, energy sectors, starting with you, Dr. Dayal?
Thanks. So I think the key word then is the in-between, right? So nexus, and if you take away the intellectual part of it and the thinking part of it, is actually the bridging between the two, the three components. And if you're thinking about that, then, you know, the SDGs very clearly say coherence is about vertical and horizontal integration. And this is the part that I think the doing must come a little bit more, because the horizontal integration is us as the technical experts reaching out to each other across the sectors. And if you just think about food alone, right? The National Food and Nutritional Security Plan had come to a conclusion in 2023. It's under review at the moment. And what is clear is that the health sector had led on that one. But clearly, And we see the interconnectedness of food with water and with energy, right? But also with land issues and accessibility to land. So if you think about that horizontal integration, it's almost feeling to me that as professionals, as experts, you have to guide and lead in that space. And that's exactly what we heard earlier. But the vertical integration, and that is the part that I think a lot of governments, and we've also heard about it, is the relationship citizens have with its government, starting with municipals and local levels, excuse me, and the intergovernmental relations that we have heard about. So this vertical integration is when you see government departments not working in tandem with each other. And where it does work, you'll see and feel the difference as a citizen. But where it doesn't work, this is where the problem comes out, right? So the more doing part means that we need to really bring that action into this coherence. That is what the SDGs obviously talk about, and how we in South Africa are doing that locally at subnational levels, but that feeds to the national levels, and this is our story to tell then. So I think this is where it needs to become a little bit more intentional, as Mr. Magoro said, but also collaborative. Because if we stay within our boxes, because that's our mandate, government likes its mandates, but that's also the lingo of maybe academics, this is what our expertise areas are, and are we ready to step a little bit aside as well? That's the trick, so yeah.
So I think, you've highlighted quite in detail the importance of collaboration, and I think it also touches on Mr. Magoro's presentation where he outlined the different stakeholders, So in that light, I'd like to find out then what is the role that IPPs can play in the integrated resource management?
They have a lot of role to play. And I think just an example of what we're able to achieve through the program and the economic development aspects of it. Maybe the first point to mention, what does not get measured won't get done, and that's a fact. So since we started beefing up our monitoring, we have actually seen an increase in focus on economic development aspects. We have seen most of them coming forth and saying, help us achieve more impactful initiatives. So for me, I think it's where it starts. We need to measure what works and what doesn't work, and we need to have initiatives that are targeted at bringing all stakeholders together. So I travel a lot in Europe in particular, and what I found is that there is a lot of collaboration between institutions of higher learning and other industry practitioners. I'm seeing a lot of that. I was in Aberdeen in June, and I was amazed that visiting a university, but people that were talking there were from the industry, hydrogen specialists. There is a big transition happening in Scotland. They are transitioning from oil and gas because of environmental reasons to offshore wind farms. And that case study of how you can turn the skill, a health safety officer in the oil and gas platforms in the offshore, can actually be turned into a health and safety officer in an offshore wind farm. And across the skills level, the same things are happening. So you asked about IPPs. I think we need to know what we want. Investors, my experience, they are there for profit. If as IPP office we did not know what we want, a lot of what I showed you would not have happened. We would have been sitting with electrons, but with nothing more to show for it. No local ownership, no community development projects. And that's, for me, is where it starts. We need to know what we want in South Africa. We talk of industrialization. DTIC must come up with a strategy on how IPPs can be used to catalyze industrialization in South Africa. And we must move ahead and force compliance. So, and it's happening everywhere. And I must also say that I'm seeing more and more selfishness within countries. We're actually going back to protectionism in the economic space now, where everyone is focusing on internal development before external development. So if we don't insist on what we want, this transition will just pass by without us having anything to show for it. So how do we mobilize IPPs? We need to decide what do we want IPPs to achieve in South Africa. And then we enforce that.
All right. No, I actually liked what you said at the beginning. You know, what does not get measured does not get done. And I think that brings us to the next point, right? You know, a key challenge with integrated resource management is how to represent and monitor it, right? Since a system that includes water, food, energy, related parameters already have their own, they're already complex on their own, right? Now to consider them as a collective and as an interdependent, it becomes with its own challenges, right? So I think, Dr. Dial, if you could perhaps maybe give a few comments on some of the best metrics that we could use to kind of measure our performance and our progress in integrated resource management.
Voiswa, I'm going to drop the best before the metrics because you never can come to the conclusion that any metric is the best one, right? But basically, you can maybe take that qualitative, subjective view of best within the own sectors, because as experts, you would be able to understand that. But I think drawing from our trajectory of the 30 years of democracy, we have come from pure quantitative metrics, trying to measure, aggregate numbers and GDP-related kind of growth. And I won't go into that aspect of it, but going into outcomes-based metrics. And, this kind of outputs of number of houses built, number of schools, number of educators in schools. And that was the kind of tick-off levels that we knew about and we understood. But basically, coming to outcomes before impact, and those metrics are the ways that you start to see the complexity and how you actually have variability in understanding what impact really is. And then you come to this scientific approaches of attribution and contribution. And that again becomes quite a difficult one because you try to make a hierarchy of evidence generated from these different metrics. And you see, different players in the field trying to bring that out. But our role as DPME is for oversight of the performance of government. So we have performance metrics, but we know that the performance of government and measuring that alone is not enough, right? We do need metrics that you see the perceptions and experience of citizens of services. And we recently just done, well, not recently, but basically during the time of emerging out of COVID and during the riots around the KZN time. And it was a study on trust in government. And some of those metrics were so difficult to bring out because everybody was having different definitions of trust. Some was about confidence in government, some was about happiness indexes. Others was like, how much do you it was a political stance of how much do you trust the politicians rather than the services. So it was very mixed, and you cannot then come to a conclusion of what a certain metrics is. But for a program, and it's a program as big as IPP and other smaller programs, let's take school nutrition program, for example. It had a large footprint in the country. It has a huge budget allocated over the 30 years. What has its impact been, right? And we do know of children that progressed because of the school nutrition program. So I think everyone has a responsibility to derive these metrics for their own programs, and then we need to elevate that as to what contribution are you making to the levels of outcomes and the intended expectations of goals that we have put out as a country. So, thank you.
No, thank you for that. I see Tato's giving me the eye for time. So I'd like to perhaps open the floor for questions, comments, reflections. There's one hand there. Can I maybe just take all the hands, and then we can take all the questions, and then the response will come as one. So there's 3 hands, 4, 5. Okay, yes. So the first hand, the lady.
We have the lady here.
Good. Okay, I'll do that. Good morning, everyone. My name is Tiamo, and I'm from the School of Public Management, doing my master's in Public Management and Governance. So my question is for Mr. Magoro, right? So currently, coal-generated energy is obviously the least expensive option to explore. And already electricity is quite expensive, with 100 rand getting you around 34 kilowatts. So non-renewable energy power sourcing will obviously be more expensive, considering, for instance, the cost of equipment. For example, solar panels are expensive to install, and not many people can afford them. So what strides will the IPPO and the Department of Energy ensure that energy supply will be affordable and accessible to all citizens of South Africa, including those in disadvantaged communities? Thank you.
Okay, the next question.
Yeah, thank you so much, Mr. Bernard, for the presentation. I think you have answered a couple of my questions as you proceeded with the presentation, but some of them remain partially unanswered. So the first question is, what is actually the estimated cost of this transition, and how will it be funded? And again, will it impact electricity rates for consumers? In other words, you presented the energy triangle. Will it be affordable for the consumers? And then the second question will be, how will this shift actually impact jobs in core-related industries? And are there retraining programs for the affected workers, especially those in Mpumalanga who are actually reliant on coal-based power stations? And then the other question is are there community programs and consultations planned for the regions heavily affected? I think I've already asked that. And then lastly, but not least, how will Eskom address issues related to land availability for large renewable installations? And are partnerships with developers being considered? I think you also presented about, installing 14,000 kilometers of transmission lines. Will that land be available? And you spoke of quadrupling the output as you decommission coal-powered power stations. Will that land actually be available to install all the IPPs? Thank you.
Right, I think the gentleman there, yes.
Can I just ask the speakers to please speak into the mic? Thank you.
Thank you so much. Good morning, colleagues and panelists. My name is Khaled Aboules. I'm Associate Professor of Power Systems, and I'm also of these resources to create a circular economy. Thank you.
Visa, would you like one more? Visa, would you like one more?
There was one, it was 5 questions in total. I don't know if we'll have time for all.
Yeah, I'll get one here then.
Okay, all right, so 2.
Good morning. My name is Dr. Fanaro, and I'm of the Electrical Engineering Department in Auckland Park. I have come to know that each country has its unique situations, and each country develops unique solutions to attend to their problems. I also know that Africa is a late adopter of technology. And so the question that comes to mind, knowing the fact that Africa is the richest continent in terms of wealth, in terms of mineral resources, not only in South Africa do you have coals, you have coal in other countries like Nigeria. What becomes of our coal that we have? That's one very important question. And I also want to ask this question that in terms of this, we do not manufacture solar panels here, for example. There are no, I don't think there is, I don't know, maybe we have started manufacturing all the necessary things to get our renewable running ourselves. And so we have to import from Europe, import from the Americas. How are we going to be able to solve? Somebody had raised the question that if we're already paying just about above the neck now, what will happen when we do everything completely? And this dream of, this target of 2030 or 2050, how is it going to play? Already we have existing problems here. Illegal connection, we are trying to fight it. We are fighting different battles here. And we are bringing a gigantic one on it again, because people who live, who their business thrives around coal, another source of energy, people in Krusile, the money invested in that kind of business, how does the government planning to balance this equation such that at the end of it, we wouldn't have houses that are burning on the roof, yet inside everything looks fine? Thank you.
Thank you. The last.
One more question from your side.
Thank you very much for the nice presentation. My name is Dr. Oliver Appen. So my question is that from the fact that food, energy, water nexus is a very nice combination, how do we normalize them? How do we normalize food, energy, and water so that it becomes balanced? Secondly, we will see that some part of the, or some countries need water and food more than the energy. Or let me just say in South Africa, for instance, some provinces need water and food, while energy might not be all that necessary, like if you go to in the village. So what is the essence of integrating them in the village that only needed to for them to solve their problems? Thank you.
All right. One last one.
Okay, the last one.
Good morning, everyone. My question is actually very short. It's directed to Mr. Mokoro over here. So nuclear power plants are considered as well. So I read that the technology to build much more secure nuclear power plants is here, and we do have the capacity. So I just wanted to know if if IPP also considers, such technology to deal with the energy crisis here in SA.
All right. Thank you. So basically, the key questions: it's the cost of renewable energies, the cost of the transition on job security, land availability, specifically looking at the transmission lines, the aspect of the circular economy, and what becomes of our coal, and what is the essence of the actual integration of water, food, and energy. And the last one was about nuclear power, and if that is part of the IPP projects. Thank you.
Okay. I will start, and then I'll let Dr. add as well. So what I have here, the first question was around the strategy that will be applied to ensure access by those disadvantaged. I did mention that there is now a drive to implement what we call microgrids. Microgrids is you basically connect a community, a rural community, put the panels, the battery, and then you don't have to bring the grid to that area, because bringing the grid is where the most of the costs are, especially for the rural community. So that is one strategy that could be applied. The other point to keep in mind, and it touches on the cost issue, we have seen, as I mentioned, 80% drop in the cost of panels. So even today, before even the next ESCOM increases, it's cheaper for households to put up panels and the battery. Economically, it's cheaper for you to do it. The only challenge that people have is the upfront cost that you need to pay. So it might cost you 150,000 Rand, but if you look at how long that asset will last you, it's actually cheaper. So that's why you're seeing more and more PV panels on the roof and people going off-grid. So those are the options that we need to start looking at, and not only rely on grid connection. Estimated cost of the transition, I don't have the exact number, but I know that the transmission grid alone will cost us about 300 billion Rand. The generation aspects, it's close to 1 trillion Rand, the last number that I had. So we are going to spend at least 1.3, 1.5 trillion Rand. But please keep in mind that when you decommission, let's say, coal-fired power stations, so the cost associated with running that power station must also be fed back into the cost that you're going to incur. So you must subtract that cost that you won't be incurring for running those old assets. So it's not an additional cost per se. It's an offset of whatever the net cost will be. But I think on that, you need to look at a few studies that have been done on the cost of the transition for South Africa. The impact on coal, that is real. We already have a case study, if you want to read about it. Komati Power Station was decommissioned a few years ago, and it's out in the open that was a bad model that was applied. So ESCOM has admitted, government has admitted, we failed when it comes to the transition, the jobs and the communities that were affected in that area. And out of that, you will hear a lot from ESCOM, from government, on how we're planning to make sure that the next transitions or the next just energy transitions are done properly with due consideration of the communities. Please get a copy of the JET-P, the JET plan. It talks a lot about how the next transition will be managed to avoid the experiences like Komati. It's available in the presidency website, but if you just Google Just Energy Transition Plan for South Africa, you'll be able to get hold of that document. It details the funding, all the initiatives that also include communities. The land for the transition, we are blessed with a lot of land in South Africa, fortunately, but we can't take it for granted. There are opportunities nowadays where you can have a PV farm and still be able to farm underneath the panels. Similarly, with wind turbines, you can have a wind farm and still continue with farming in that same piece of land. So we are getting more and more efficient in how we utilize land for energy and other resources. The circular economy, there's a lot of studies being done to address the issue of reuse of the PV panels, the wind turbines blades. We're not there yet, but there's a lot of work that has been done, which you can also read about it as well. Yes, I agree that each country needs a unique solution. That's 100% correct. And as we adopt these renewables, we are not just taking whatever, we're not allowing energy dumping or product dumping into our country. We are actually dictating what it should be able to do, how long it should last, and what are the characteristics. And I had somebody talking about power systems. I was involved as a grid operator in setting up the grid code for renewables for South Africa, which details exactly what we want the PV and wind farms to do so that they don't compromise our grid stability issues. Mineral resources, yes, already you might have heard about carbon border adjustment mechanism. That's the reality check for most countries like South Africa. If you produce your products from carbon-based energy sources, you are not going to be able to export those products to other countries. We are an exporting nation, and we are an energy-intensive economy. And this is why the mining houses and other smelters and other industries are now going beyond the IPP program, procuring their own energy. Because they know come 2026, Europe is going to implement the CBAM, Carbon Border Adjustment Mechanism, and they will not be able to export their products. So it's not just an issue of following the trend. It's the reality of keeping our economy going. I think the last one that I see here is the nuclear. Nuclear was part of the mix in the last integrated resource plan. And if you've listened to Minister Ramkhopa talking lately, there is a lot of discussions around nuclear. I am not involved in the energy planning space, but I have no doubt that South Africa, for base load and energy security reasons, we will tap into the nuclear space. Obviously, there are issues of costs and there are issues of other environmental issues around nuclear, but it's a much better technology than coal. And I think it does provide a sustainable energy at a reasonable cost. And as we know the grid today, I mentioned that 40% of the technology that we need for the transition we don't have. But we have nuclear, and nuclear, we know that it's sustainable and it's reliable. So I personally believe that it's part of the mix, but that's the role of the energy planners to decide, how much and whether it should be part of the mix. I think we have touched on all the questions. Thank you.
Yes. Dr. Dial?
I'm going to save time. I have a presentation next, so I think I was well covered and the questions were posted, Dr. Mo.
All right. Okay. No, thank you very much. I'd like to thank our esteemed panelists once again for the conversation and for your expertise. Thank you.
Mukhara, we just participation, your contribution, and as well as answering questions, as well as Prof. Dial. Thank you. I know you're still going to do your keynote speech, but I thought let me just give that to you now. Thank you so much. Oh, okay, we can do handover. Just quickly, I just want to just share, if anyone has any additional questions, or maybe you have a question that you was not answered, or you're not confident to speak up, you can email questions, and then we will facilitate you getting an answer. So you can send it to the email ccpfews, so it's ccpfews@gmail.com. So if you've got any questions, please feel free to send your questions via email, and then we will definitely get the panelists to address you. So thank you very much. We would just like to have a quick tea break. And then, so since it is 5 past, can we please be back at 1:15, please, so that we can have our second keynote and second panel. Thank you. Do you guys want to photos?
Yeah,
we can do photos quickly. The banner is this one here.
That's the only banner.
Yes. No, we're going to do photos, yeah. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Sorry, I didn't do it in front of everyone,
No,
but
it's fine.
thank you so much. I really appreciate it. I love your voice. It's like honey. Like I want to listen to you all day. Yeah, that thing. But thank you so much. I really appreciate it. I know we were under time crunch. Yeah, it was a title. Yeah. Okay, where's that photographer who said he wanted pictures? You said you wanted pictures.
Yeah,
I thought let's let people go, then we can take photos. Yeah. Where do you want to take photos? Hi. It's so nice to see you. I was looking at photos the other day. Yes, I'll organize that. I was actually looking at photos the other day of that day that you did, and I was like, I want to do that again. Like, I really want to do it again. Yeah. You still open cards that yeah, we still my dad is the one who's like setting everything up. But I'm in the Western Cape. Yeah, I'm managing another a lot of family problems just continue. I'll find them. Don't worry, I'll find them. And I'll find you. Okay, thanks. But how are you?
I'm fine.
When are you busy?
Yeah, busy.
Like when do you rest?
Saturday. Saturday. I'll never do any work. I will try not to do any work. Saturday.
so we just trying to catch up. So I'd just like to introduce Professor Harsha Dayal. Dr. Litsuku introduced you quite well, and you will be talking about the evidence-based policymaking in the food, energy, water nexus, lessons from 3 decades. So thank you very much.
It's not working. Oh, okay. I'd like to be in control over the slides, so it's okay. Thank you very much. And I may just save you on time because I will kind of go through what has already been discussed and maybe just touch on some of the other things that was spoken about earlier. So thank you very much and good afternoon. Have we entered into the afternoon? Professor Bokoro and Professor Namdi, I don't know, but to the team that had invited and the voice of government, it's really, really encouraging to see this happening. So I want to take you through our journey of evidence use. And that's why, excuse me, I want to take you through this journey because in a way, we in the Department of Planning, Monitoring and Evaluation, we also transformed over this period of time of this 30-year journey. So next slide, please. What I'm going to do is to just take you through these 4 areas and draw specifically on a 30-year review that we had just concluded. Now, these reviews are our flagship reviews because it coincides with the political cycles. If you see it, there were the 5-year cycles we talk about. So at the end of just before the elections, we do a review to assess the government performance and then inform the next set of government priorities as such. So this part of it, I think you've already seen and heard from the introduction this morning. I'm going to step in front of you because I don't have now the pointer. So this is really the trajectory and it's a little bit off the screen, but you'll see that from 1994 to 2004. Sorry, can you shift the screen a little bit? Oh, they're fixing it. All right. Okay. Just to continue then, you do see that there's this 3 decades of trajectory that each phase of our democracy had brought out not just new achievements and what the policy directions was, but new challenges that kept on coming up as well. So you will get this presentation and there's nothing new in there that you do not maybe already know about. And I want to congratulate the students in the room for having asked so many nice detailed questions earlier. I can see that you are not just the blood, but the future because you're thinking through what is going on as we are dealing with the aspects. I think, yeah. It's actually a projection thing. Okay, while that's happening, for me, I want to take you through some of the very traditional type of evidence that comes out. And you will then be able to assess then for yourself as we move into the slides. And I'm going to bring out what the 30-year review has put forward, because it's evidence-based, it's statistics, but the census of 1996, the census of 2001, 2011, and then 2022 has showed us the gradual increase of household level services, basic services that's available, right? Now this you can see from those that are dealing with the technical aspects of electricity. It becomes quite the experience, the lived experience of this kind of population with access to basic services. Next slide, please. And I apologize, I'm not sure what's happening with the slides, but it's just cut off on the left-hand side. Now, the structure of the economy, and I think this is where you start seeing the patterns and the coherence of policies, but basically you see that the structure of the economy and manufacturing share of GDP, how it kind of convolutes between 1994, 2002, 2012, and then 2020. So you'll see that the finance, real estate, and business services, it remained at the top notch, but then you see manufacturing having gone down to number 4, right? So you see this 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 just moving around. But where you see electricity, gas, and water, and agriculture, forestry, and fishery in terms of its contribution to GDP is a reflection of probably the kind of investments as well as the share of the GDP that we want to measure. And obviously when you see these kind of growth patterns happening and not serve back into the economy, you want to also then start to think through what is it about electricity, gas, and water that from the perspective of the structure of the economy is not feeding back into it, which is why the level of investment is then needed, right? So this just shows you a backdrop against what we are talking about and positioning fuel within that space. Next slide, please. So what we wanted to show in the last 5 years, that investments in infrastructure, and you will hear government talking about investment in infrastructure constantly, that the investment in infrastructure is taking root now. And you see it right across the 9 provinces, but also when Mr. Magoro had put out the channels of where the transmission has to also happen and the transportation of these electrical channels. So in this way, infrastructure development, and this becomes the kind of provincial level, we talk about provincial growth and development, not just the national level, but this is where provinces become quite key in this kind of bidding and in this kind of contributions. So apologies for you won't be able to read all of it, but it's really to show you that, and it's in our 30-year review, that the whole concept of leaving no one behind, and people are really measuring along their expert areas as well. Next slide, please. So now here comes one of those questions around, meeting the need, so the demand. And what we're seeing here is from macro to micro levels, that we see the big picture, but look at the household level, look at consumption rates. Consumption at the household level increased, right? And it's not just increased, but also pushed out some of the other trade and what I think Mr. Magoro was giving the reminiscence of childhood, where we were producing some of our own what we need and what we need to consume. But look at the consumption levels at a household. And if you think about this, then we are, and this is one of the questions that was posed, and I would have wanted to answer it, but if you talk about expenditure and costing, are you as citizens and are we as consumers then thinking through a behavior change of ourselves? How much are we consuming that isn't necessarily meeting only basic needs, but how much are we taking out of the environment within which we are consuming? So the consumption levels is what we are trying to see, how it can be tamed, how it can be, tailored down, because when you see the electricity at a household level becoming on a paid per meter level, you already see the behavior shifts changing, because you can actually see how much you are using for the fridge, how much you're using for the microwave, and some of the other households have others, and we now know how much we need to put all our electricity poles, plug points off. So it's a behavior shift that also has to happen by citizens. And this is the kind of measure we should be also bringing in, right? So I'm going to take you through different aspects, and this comes from the Bureau of Economic Research, but bearing in mind that while this big picture is happening, that household level consumption rates has to also be curbed at some point, not because of wastage, but because of the mindsets that we have of how much we need at a point of living expenses and all the others. Next slide, please. So for us then at the at the presidency level, we speak about a national level, food, energy, and water nexus. But we also need to see that our NDP vision is aligned then, and this is partly what our cross-sectoral policy integration needs to happen. Okay, thank you. The cross-sectoral policy, I don't think you can sort the screen out, right? I'm not sure. The cross-sectoral policy integration.
If you'd like, they can try and change their projector and use this one. They've got one spare one, because they say the projector is faulty.
Oh. I don't think we have time, right? I don't know if people's view is being people's view is being blocked by that, but I'll just speak you through it. So, time to transfer this. Okay, colleagues, just bear with this projector story now. So our levels of integration doesn't mean only at the level of national, but we do need to integrate with Africa Agenda 2063, as well as the SDGs that I think the center people have spoken about already, right? But think about what Africa Agenda 2063 is also dealing with around fuel. And if you're thinking about that, then how do we collaborate around that as well? They're backwards, sorry. Again, sorry about that, but basically, when you're talking about, and you heard Mr. Mogoro saying about energy planning. So energy planning is contained in the National Development Plan, but again, it's coming to the point of reviewing in a way of national planning system. So this is speaking to sectoral plans, institutional and operational plans, program plans, medium and long-term planning, provincial and focal planning, and the district development plans. Now, this is a lot of plans, and I think you may be a little bit exhausted of hearing plans from government, but the kind of synergy you want to see is not just about plans, but it's about how that kind of plans are made sensible, and we're moving in the bottoms-up model, if you want to call it that, into a district development model. Because if you think about where change has to happen, and we talk about this kind of change over a long-term period and not just short-term projects that are actually bringing in this kind of change that we want. So this is to show you that, if that issue, that agenda item that you want to see happening isn't reflected in any of the plans, is it going to happen? And then obviously plans turn to budgets, and budgets then becomes declared in Parliament, and there's a whole process behind it, right? So this is where maybe the question of the University of Johannesburg's role in the whole aspect can become a little bit more operationalized and dealing with how government actually operates. Now, we spoke about monitoring frameworks, and You know, part of the coherence, and I know some of the frustration you might be experiencing when you go to a point of service and you don't have one department speaking to another department. And that is at the point of service delivery. But in terms of monitoring frameworks, it is really difficult for so many line function departments to go beyond their own mandates and speak to each other across, and that's what I was referring to horizontally. But that's the work that our department was tasked with. And I can maybe spend a whole day telling you about the frustrations behind the scenes as well. But I think the few and this center specifically can actually demonstrate how this nexus can be bridged, how this collaboration can be made, and point to that direction, because we have been, which one is the, what happened there? Okay, we have been introduced, and I mentioned to you how we went through our own transformation journey of from outputs to outcomes to now results-based planning and monitoring. And we use quite a lot of different tools and frameworks, but basically it's to reflect the whole of government work. And if you see it not in the annual performance plans, it doesn't get budgeted for. And I think this is the point that you need to please remember to, you know, if you want to hold ever government accountable to anything, look at these aspects, because as citizens, as practitioners, as professionals, there is a way that you can actually bring home this kind of thinking. So, oh, I see this PowerPoint is really becoming a problem there. Now I think that you already saw this when we were talking about how and where South Africa is positioned with the G20 coal power per capita emissions. And our emissions are very much aligned to these bigger countries and thinking about where the other countries are positioned, right? So it's more about linking few to the climate responsibilities that we also have. Now, I think that part of our, and I'm sorry again, because what we are looking at is that there are challenges within food security, energy security, and water security that you can see becomes a kind of a cross-cutter. And if you can identify those cross-cutters, we start to see that collectively each of these sectors can start to contribute and influence the space even more substantially. There are various programs, and there is a push to, you heard about all of this already in terms of diversifying the energy mix. But again, I'm going to take you through thinking through what does this all mean still. So there's no way we can talk about few as well, colleagues, if we do not bring the gender lens into it. And if I want to just bring out our comparison to the SDGs, right? So basically, what you'll see from this end here is Africa remains, for women in particular by sex ratio, more food insecure because of just based at the household level, right? Now we have much more work to be done in terms of using a gender lens and expecting our national plans to be responsive to this now. And how do we actually bring out this aspect of gender inequality? It actually is providing a big picture to some of our achievements. And this is a reality check, and we have to start to appreciate that. But we seem to be doing better in water. Why is that? Gender mainstreaming in water resource management has been, you can see that when you get the slides, you'll be able to see this ratio here. But basically, you'll see South Africa is doing rather well in terms of gender mainstreaming in water resource management. And now, this is a descriptive analysis, but the question is why and what is being done differently. Now, I'm sorry again, but the question then comes, there's so much of evidence that you are generating collectively, not just in the center, but right across the different universities, the specialized centers of excellence, the Saki chairs, the National System of Innovation that we have in place. But what we're finding is that, how do we actually assess the issue of impact? And let's talk about that, right? This is on, why does it keep doing that? This figure here is an international collection of all, I don't think you can read that small print there, but it's an international collection of all the impact evaluations that was done by sector. And there you'll see the biggest one is the health sector. And they do impact evaluations as the hierarchy of evidence that you need. This is the water, energy, and food sectors for impact evaluations. So you can see that the generation of this type of evidence is not there to be able to actually assess the impact of some of your programs, right? We in DPME have been mapping the evidence that's available beyond impact evaluations. We are finding a lot of gaps according to the policy relevance. So what this brings out to you is how and who produces relevant information, data, and evidence. And I want to bring this aspect of who are the stakeholders that we want to work with. Now, we've been doing some kind of exercises in understanding what our sphere of influence is. And if you think about the center now, and the center being, okay, if you put your center there, and I want to introduce the aspect of boundary partners, because it will lead us to some of the future directions that I want to bring out for you. If you talk about the boundary partners, then you want to influence your stakeholders. And I think the question was earlier, how will University of Johannesburg contribute? And then it's not just University of Johannesburg, it's the center will contribute to these bigger plans, right? And that's the part that needs to be worked out according to which stakeholders you will be working with. So in our sphere of control, and this is partly what you produce, how your program is designed, who your funders are, where do you get funding from, but also who are your direct influences that you want to be able to work with. But then you see, as you're moving into the institutional context, there's a lot of other collaboration and influences that you can have. But are we all collectively moving in the same direction? I know there will be different ways of assessing progress, which is what we were talking about earlier as well. But if you think about a 30-year trajectory, sometimes you take a slice in time, you think between 2 points, we are doing better. But if you take over the period of time, you see a lot of dips and curves. And then you wonder what is happening in the spaces when the trend is going down, the trend is going up. And those are the kind of questions we should start asking. Are we all working towards the same goals and in the same direction? I'd like to say to you that actually integrated management is more about effective governance of multiple narratives. And you see this playing out in the media, you see this, how it comes out in, not just now in traditional media, but also in social media. But we see that people want to position themselves, and it's really about a governance of the different stakeholders. So it's beyond stakeholder management in its traditional forms. And I think this is where you'll see anybody who deals with a narrative, in a sense that we do not want, Shell to come into our country and do that fracking situation in the West Coast, right? And what reasons? But you'll have different people putting evidence on the table for different reasons. which evidence trumps whose. So this is why it's more about the governance structures. Now, I think at a national level, and obviously at more of the organized spaces, you have NEDLEC, for example, bringing together business, government, private sector, unions, labor unions, and everybody to be able to negotiate. Now, I think this is where some of our resource and integrated management strategies come out. How much of consensus building, how much of agreements can we come to, given that there will be trade-offs, there will be spillovers, but basically this is what we're talking about now, right? So I think the question now becomes, and everybody's talking about impact. And if we want to move into this space, the focus on measuring social impact becomes even much more complex. And this is the part that we find in government. We are beginning to see the levels of complexity, because you have gains in one area and you have shortfalls in the other area, but you have it playing out differently when it actually hits the ground at the local levels. And you're talking about impact, social impact, even the SDGs are dealing with impact. And I think part of your center, number 16, SDG 16, was newly introduced because it spoke to governance issues. And I would suggest that we also look at governance in terms of that one there. So the SDGs, and we hear about technology and advancement of technology, but then maybe are we still dealing with some of the old dinosaurs of how government operates and dealing with AI and technology. And I think University of Johannesburg is already at the forefront of technological innovation. Shifting values. I mean, at one point, I think we were all talking about the way, you know, especially with the labor-intensive parts of solar energy, but also how and what does it mean for building the skills base that we so much need, right? Sorry, I'm pressing this one here. This changing demographies. I think the migration patterns, and I don't know if the center can start also dealing with what levels of migration patterns happens, because that is where plans get measured, but also in terms of the different crisis that hits us without being part of the plan, obviously. Focus on well-being, and this is collective well-being, but I think this is the way that we start to see social impact becoming differentiated at the local levels as well. Many more social movements putting pressure on governments, the refocus from the industrial age. We see that coal and the global north would have given us much more of that push in this direction now, as we are just catching up. And South Africa is a very young democracy compared to other democracies, and we can learn from their mistakes, but we also need to be catching up. In terms of the others, I think this you'll see that there's a lot of consequence management aspects also, and holding government accountable. So I'm going to just end with this slide to say that, you know, in terms of future directions, we can have a lot of technology, a lot of the expertise driven in terms of professionalism and all of that we see is needed. But we're looking at public value and critical theory that should still be the framing behind what we do. And why I say public value, you know, everybody will maybe in this room understand the tragedy of the commons, that if you have one resource around, maybe it's one resource, and if it gets overused, what happens over the long term? And this public value is bringing out quite a lot of what it is that we collectively need to do for ourselves and for the future generations, right? But critical theory needs to still guide the few initiatives and the interventions that you are planning for, as well as your strategies. The second one, I think, is, for me, the more important one. And strengthening intermediaries. Now, let's just unpack that one a little bit in this conclusion. When you see the IPP and the presentation given by Mr. Mogoro, right? You also noted at the end that he spoke a lot about the offshoots that into the communities, what they were busy funding. So they were beginning to play a lot more of this bridging between a national and a local level need. So there are many intermediaries that play this role. And I think the one example here in Gauteng is the GCRO, the Gauteng City Region Observatory. It's a partnership between Gauteng Province, University of Johannesburg, and Wits University. And there they are bringing in the kind of evidence that's needed. They do not claim to be an intermediary, but they are functioning as intermediaries. And intermediaries bridge this nexus. And they play the collaborative model role that you will see the facilitators, the builders, the translators, the influencers, the relationship builders, if I can put it that way. And it's not just relationship builders between you and I, but relationships between agencies, between organizations, between projects, so that it's not one-off standalone projects alone, right? I think the last one is methodological diversity. And what I was trying to present upfront is to show you that, you know, traditional quantitative measures are not enough. It's not that they're not good enough, but they're not enough. And when you want to think through methodological diversity, it's about striking a balance between somewhere between the specific that has no meaning and the general that has no content. And if you think about that, that's a systems level intelligence. That how and when do you bridge between this nexus? And this nexus is not about undoing, it's about building those bridges between them. And I think this is where I would be taking my evidence champion hat on and say, let's lead with the evidence you are generating. And if that is the bridge builder, then that would be a communication language on its own. So I apologize for the view, but basically I think you do have the gist of it. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Dr. Dayal. We apologize about the technical difficulties. Just in the interest of time, if anyone has questions, please, I encourage you to please email ccpfews@gmail.com, and then we'll make sure that we can get your questions in. I would like to please open the next panel, which will be headed by Dr. Eric Makoni. The topic is Innovation, Technology, and Entrepreneurship in the Food, Energy, Water Nexus. I'd just like to ask our panel speakers, Ms. Sabisi, Ms. Mgona, Mr. Moahi, and Ms. Maseba to please join us on stage. Thank you.
Yeah.
That was very strategic.
All right. Good afternoon. Thank you so much to Dr. Harsha for the presentation. You've really got us thinking basically about the significance of systems thinking, especially when talking about and how the three, and primarily we really appreciate the role of governance that you've highlighted there, because at the center of it all at the center of managing this very, very complex nexus is the governance of it all. So we should thank you so much for that. So for this particular session, I wish to welcome our panelists. We've got Sandeso Sibisi. Welcome, Sandeso. And then we've got Lieko Makwene. Welcome, Lieko. And then we've got Mulibati Muahi. Welcome, sir. And we also have Lisedi Masibe. Yes. Thank you so much for taking the time to in addressing resource challenges. So what is the role of technology and what is the potential role of technology in enhancing the WEF, as it were? Maybe let me start with you, sir.
Thank you very much. As mentioned, my name is Mulibati Muahi from Center for Supply Development. We are involved more on the entrepreneurship side in terms of developing entrepreneurs. And indeed, technology plays a very, very critical role within the space that we are operating in. In particular, one of the technologies that is impacting the space around food production is the fourth industrial revolution. You know, it's interesting when you look at where we are as a country to say, if you assess the sector, we are literally still stuck in the second industrial revolution, which means that we are far, far behind the rest of the world in terms of where they are. And for me, I think the critical question is, how can we then harness technology to leapfrog that situation? Because the critical thing really is, I think we often talk about the digital divide.
Where we're pushing the significance of bringing in people that were hitherto marginalized into the fray, into the conversation. So that sort of leads me to my second question, Sandeso. How can technology assist young entrepreneurs in sort of looping into the WEF?
Thank you. I'm glad you didn't ask me to explain like how they can help with the 4IR technologies, because I think there's a lot of conversation around 4IR technologies, and we're just not there as a country. I think there's a lot of digital work to be done before we can actually fully, I guess, appreciate the 4IR technologies. And I think it just starts with basic things. So I'm an entrepreneur, but also just a purist technologist. So just completely love technologies. And we in our business, just basic things like I think invoicing and purchase orders, we probably didn't do them as well as we should in the past. We just implemented the purchase order procurement process because as an entrepreneur, when you start, you just formalize the customer side of the business, but you don't formalize the back end side of the business. So the procurement process is purely like an internal operational activity. And so we used to just like go buy whatever we think we need when we need it, no planning. And I think technologies provide that infrastructure where you can almost plan out your cash flow. You can project when you're going to run out of money as an entrepreneur. And I don't think we're using technology to do the basics, the basic things for an entrepreneurs. And I think it just starts by that, just digitizing your processes. As much as I'm in the technology space, I think I probably battle to use technology as well, because I still use a notebook. I know most people use the fancy iPad that transforms your handwriting into like digital text. I still come with the notebook to a meeting. So it's those little things, just improving our own perspective, efficiencies. And I think, like I said, I think I want to just harp on the fact that it doesn't have to be the big stuff. I think it's the basic stuff. And I think if you get the basic stuff digitized, then becomes easier to apply the AIs, etc. Part of our business is that we help our corporate clients become I guess, consumers of this AI technology metaverse. And more often than not, they actually can't even implement the technologies themselves because they too need to just digitize a whole lot of their processes. So I want to just like encourage entrepreneurs, encourage people that are serving the economy to really just focus on digitizing everything that they have. That's the most important thing you can do, because once you then you start seeing ways that you can, what you can automate when it's digitized, etc. Then it just becomes a whole lot more easier. But that's how I think we could be using technology, just doing the basic back to basic stuff to just get us by, and then the other stuff will just come naturally thereafter.
Yes, please.
Hi, my name is Lesedi Masebe from Masebe Farms. Unlike Ndatamare, I'm a second generation farmer. My parents started the business. Talking about technology, what she was saying is very true. The first thing you need to do is write everything down, guys. Like, you can never have too many copies of anything. Have a cloud, put it up there. Make sure that all of your invoices, purchase orders, everything goes into some sort of a central system that will also kick out a report. Right now, there are a lot of programs that will kick out a report that will say you are spending this much versus what you projected to spend, which is what your business plan will say. And also, the business plan is a lie because it never says that you're going to lose money. It always says that you're going to make money. But the reality of the situation is that you're going to lose money. Sometimes clients won't pay, or they'll pay late, or a payment system, like some government, they will pay you after 30 days. Some will pay you after 60 days. So that will also interrupt your cash flow. When you use AI, ChatGPT, those kind of systems, they will also tell you how to mitigate such things like that, what to do for cash flow. Just a little bit about Masebe Farms. We are conservation agriculturalists and semi-organic agriculturalists. That means that we try to use as little chemicals and pesticides in the growing of our products. So what we did in terms of integrating technology is having a full irrigation system. We've just put in solar now, and then we're also going to implement it's a system that runs along with the irrigation system that will say the land is dry, you need to water it. Because sometimes my topical view versus what's happening underneath is not meeting, and then we wonder why the plant is not growing or it's not doing so well. So this is what the soil or the plant needs. It also helps with soil management processes and water management processes, which in turn affects the bank. Because if we don't move with the times, guys, agriculture is very expensive. It's very expensive, and it's a runaway train at the same time. So when we implement these kind of systems, along with traditional agricultural practices being scouting, you're able to save money and pinch where you can, which in turn, will show that you are managing your business better and things like that. But the thing that I wanted to touch on was what she was saying is that we are still very far as a country. As much as I talk about all of these nice things that I have, it's very difficult for me sometimes to implement them because of general infrastructure that's got nothing to do with me as a farmer. I'm in Gauteng, but the area that I'm in is severely underdeveloped. So my internet is not so great. I'm not even going to talk about my cell phone network because anybody tries to call me cannot get a hold of me. So when I try to do these kind of things as well, that's also a macro problem that I cannot solve as the entrepreneur at the moment. So even wanting to talk about the fourth industrial revolution, we are not there yet, whereas we don't have basic network coverage over our area. Electricity, we just recently lost poles, electrical poles, due to weather storms, and it took a week for that to get up. Now we just planted seedlings. They're about 20 weeks old. If I didn't have my solar, and which is only putting me 80% off the grid, I would have lost my entire crop. So that's in excess of however much revenue I was gonna get from that. But my neighboring farmers, one of them is a dairy farmer, he lost all of his product just because of that one thing. He is fully mechanized, but not on solar. But then that one thing is happening there. So within our South African space, we still have quite a lot to do. Even with, the previous people that were here were talking about monitoring, they were talking about infrastructure, they were talking about all these other things. As soon as we can get ourselves to a halfway point, then we can start to see some kind of change. And as well as Dr. Dayal, she was talking about with agriculture being all the way at the bottom there and not contributing enough to the ecosystem. We sometimes cannot do that because technologically we are not there.
Absolutely.
And now when we try to, sorry,
Yes, maybe let's just give others a chance to. Thank you so much, Lisa. And I can tell you're really passionate about what you do. And that's the passion we need. Yes, maybe to loop from what Lisette was saying earlier. I know you've been working in the rural development space. Maybe can you share some experiences and what you've seen from an innovation, food security, water security perspective?
Okay.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Leeko. I am the founder of a platform called Made with Rural. So we do a lot of work with rural communities. I'm a farmer myself. I'm a third generation farmer, but I didn't inherit any land in Tatemwachi from my ancestors. Unfortunately, the apartheid government decided to take a farm and build a military base on it. So I've had to start from scratch. So yeah, I'm same as a first generational farmer. So I started my farming journey back in 2010 as a poultry producer, but then at the time I ran a hatchery back in my village. I was born in Hammanskraal in a village called Makapanstad. We all know the problems, well, I'm assuming that we all know the problems that, we're currently facing in Hammanskraal and the water challenges. And there's a problem that has always been there from when we were very little. You walk around, people have brown teeth, you ask why, they say it's from the rain water, I think the acid in it. We didn't have taps in our yards. We had like community boreholes where you go with the donkey cart, pay 10 cents. Someone, I think, in the community decided to fence it off, maintain it, and charge for us to collect the water. So I grew up, around such, like at that level of subsistence farming, where you have to really collect water from far or use water from the rivers around the area to water your produce. But then years later, here I am, new dawn, trying to farm as a commercial farmer, right? So I'm playing in like where I'm subjected to global standards, and water has to be very clean. You have to do water tests, you have to see, because we all know we had a listeriosis outbreak back in the days. There's E. coli in water. There's a whole lot of things that happen in our rivers, right? So it's a huge challenge, technological-wise, because I agree with Sindiswa that you have to really start at the basic level. We have to meet people where they are. I've seen people bringing technology into our space, into the rural community space, that just talks past people, because it wasn't really, they were not involved from the onset, or they didn't work with organizations like my own, to try to understand the challenges and where people are at. So it's just been that top-down approach and a whole lot of that technology not even working, or the people not even adapting it, because they can't relate. So I really believe that whatever that we bring in, we innovate, or we try to solve these rural community challenges around food, energy, and water in that space, we have to meet people where they are. We have to work with organizations, associations, community groups that are on the ground, understand the challenges better, and are working with the people every single day. Those are the people that can be able to, give the information that we need, just a starting point for us to then start slowly introducing. And also for you know what I mean? I'd love to use your sensor, but hey, I have a challenge here to get water to my plants. And even that water is dirty, right? If I supply into a formal space, retail space, I am subjected to a whole lot of tests. There's product sampling, the truck comes, they can take a few things, they can reject my load because something wrong was found maybe in my water, the water that I was using. So it's something else out there. Conversations, we hear conversations from government, from everywhere, where people are just like thinking, there's lots of land in the rural areas. Why are the people hungry? Why are you not farming that land? But what are you saying? Because it's of zero value in most cases, that land.
Wow, thank you. Thank you so much, Lieko, for those insights. It gets us to think really about the value chains, isn't it? Whether it's the food value chain, the entire agricultural value chain, the water, as well as the technologies and stuff, and who gets to tap into those value chains, and what are the barriers, basically, of entry, especially for the hitherto marginalized, or some communities continue to be marginalized. So I think as we're talking here at UJ, we need not lose sight of the socio-economic as well as spatial disparities that we continue to grapple with in this country, to say that there are new tech bringing in to the Nexus, as it were.
Thank you. Supply development essentially has got to do with its future. It's got a future orientation, because we can't develop a supplier for you if you're only thinking of procuring right now. So, and that is very, very critical. That's why even from a food security point of view, I'm already thinking beyond. I mean, we are reviewing the past 30 years to say what has been achieved, and indeed a lot has been achieved. But the key thing for me is, what have we learned from the past 30 years, and what strategies can we come up for the future? And supply development really has to do with that, because you've got to be able to give us a future a perspective in terms of the demand, the quality standards. I mean, we're talking about those global standards and all of that. The fact of the matter is that if you are going to succeed and compete in the future, you need to be prepared now. And this is where we see a role for an institution such as UJ to say, maybe we need to look at the current approach, where our education system is churning out a lot of graduates who actually don't have, they come out so ill-equipped, they don't have the skills to integrate into the industry. And as a result, they are not going to help us to solve the food security in the future. And that's where I'm coming from, even from a 4IR point of view, to say we need to acknowledge the fact that we are part of the global community now. Your competition is not the person next door. Your competition is that agripreneur in Israel, in China, and all of that has got access to all of these technologies that can operate within that space. And if we cannot find a way to bring that home, and especially because usually it's the last resort, or some of them, because we also host a lot of university students. I mean, currently we've got 6 students from the University of Mpumalanga who are doing their workplace skills learning. And I always take time to try and tap into their minds to say, what got you into this sector? And the unfortunate part, as I said, is that none of them are in that sector to solve the bigger problems that we have, which is food security. Now, how do we then get in and make sure that we can assist in that? Because if you look at their curriculum, it's still based on, it's a 30-year-old curriculum. It has never been updated to now to say, what have we learned? What is it that we can take? Now to say, what have we learned? What is it that we can take? Let's consolidate the knowledge of the past 30 years. Let's consolidate the knowledge of the past 30 years and come up with a program that we can be able to fast track in the next 5 or 10 years. We don't have another 30 years to learn. We simply 5 or 10 years. We don't have another 30 years to learn. We simply don't have that luxury. And that's why I'm seeing those technologies coming in to say.
Contributing a lot in entrepreneurship, I mean, especially of young people and how they can tap into the food, energy, and water kind of nexus. What can you share with us in terms of the innovation? Let's talk about the innovation. We know the challenges. We know what we need to be dealing with, and we wouldn't want to be categorizing them and tabulating them right now because we know the challenges. But what have you witnessed and observed from an innovation perspective? Is there any desire from young people at least to come up with innovative ways of dealing with the challenges that we're faced with from a food, water, and energy perspective? Or are you seeing some sense of
and I've seen a lot around IoT. You've already alluded to some of the IoT solutions, the sensing, etc. That's pure IoT. I think where we're going innovation-wise, I think we're going to see more of a convergence of these technologies. So you wouldn't just get IoT on its own, but you'd get IoT, AI, and metaverse, all being one solution and really giving exponential value to the consumer of the technology. So I think in farming, I think that the stuff that has really I guess gathered like lots of speed is around sensing, remote sensing, etc., etc. And I think it's quite relevant for the sector, given that IoT is very much like how do you get a farmer who doesn't have access to the grid? So I think that the solutions are out there, and I think they probably have been coming out more from universities, and I think the scalability of them is then putting pressure on the success of these commercializations. I'm seeing a lot of things around AI. And I think, and for me, what I love about AI, it doesn't require much hardware. It's basically a mobile phone, a smartphone, and you can sort of plug it in. I mean, all of us have WhatsApp, and WhatsApp already has Siri NLP solution. Okay, who has a smartphone? Hands up. And who's using an NLP solution? Hands up. Yeah, so it's just we're not using what we have, and that for me is quite concerning. And I think it's maybe the know-how of how to do it. I know before the struggle that most people had with like NLPs is that our what's that dialect? Our pronunciation of words doesn't match the American pronunciation of words, so sometimes a miscommunication, etc. But there's nothing stopping us, like putting through Xhosa NLPs, Setswana NLPs. That's up to us. The technology is there. We must just use it towards our advantage. And then lastly, just on so I think there's lots to be said around NLPs that speaks to, I mean, everyone has been talking about ChatGPT, right?
It's expensive.
But it's a whole lot. But I think in the but I think in the past 5 years, I think it's about an 80% reduction in cost. So I think, and the same for IoT used to be really expensive, but now you can buy a Raspberry Pi, sort up your own, like put your stuff together on your own. I know in Varsity they have a lot of those projects. It can cost you like a little 100 rand to just create like a tracker for yourself. And I think with Metaverse, we're probably going to go to an area whereby it also becomes affordable as well. So I want to just pause there. Thank you.
Girl, it's enough. You did what you wanted to do. You can come back now. So that's how I do. You can come back now. So that's how I basically ended up back into the family business. But the transition was not so smooth because the pace that happens within hospitality and within the kitchen is much faster than what farming is. The kitchen is much faster than what farming is. And farming can also be mitigation. That you can mitigate whatever's happening as it's happening. It's not such a wild west space. You have to plan, you have to scout. Like I was talking about scouting earlier, you also have to learn that some business practices kind of don't apply to the agricultural space. The basics do. You must have financials, you must have planning, you must have your marketing, you must have your branding, whatever else that you need to have, but it's the implementation of that sometimes that doesn't quite translate. I also found it to be a very frustrating space because as a young black farmer and being female, you will have businesses come and people from even it's like, just do it the way that I'm telling you to do it and it will be done. So within the space that I am, we are mostly a grain area. I'm one of the few farmers that are doing vegetables. So sometimes also when we are part of the CFSD program as well, you need to also learn how to ask for help. It's important to learn how to ask for help. Ostatolene, she is somebody that we lean on a lot. The CSFSD program we lean on a lot. They will also put you in touch with not only mentors but coaches, the supplier as well. We are gonna be working with the same kind of marketing strategy that you would when you want to other process. She was talking about now global gap practices. Those are expensive as well. They also require technology as well. They also require money as well, because to be globally accepted, you need to operate at a certain level. And it feeds into what she was saying, that we sometimes just don't have the capacity. So you already are at a disadvantage, feeding into as well food insecurity. If we don't have government policies as well supporting us, and you have to be political as well in my space. It's one of the things that we learned. You have to be political in our space. You have to advocate for yourself. You have to advocate for the space that you're in. The people that are there now, it's fine, it's working for them. But if we want to play with the big boys, which you've already alluded to, Ntatemach was saying, I'm not competing with her. We're competing with everybody. Because I don't only want to send my produce to, even if I'm sending my produce to Woolworths or Pick and Pay, wherever, Aokashaba on the shelves, you find dates that are coming in from Morocco, you find nuts that are coming in from Kenya or Malawi. So you're not only competing with those people, we have the infrastructure, we have the land to do all of that, but you are competing at a high level.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Lisa, that are doing it, whether it's chickens, it's cabbages, it's amazing grains, such as Oli said in that. Please come in.
Okay. As women, we have a very big shoes to fill. So that role of advocacy is top priority. We mothers, we community builders, we understand what it takes to feed a household. Also just to come in a little bit, when Ntatemwagi left off, we sort of, most of the people in the farming space are trying to solve for the same thing. Like we just all trying to fight for the same shelf space. But guess what? We have 20 million people in this country going to bed hungry every single day. And not a lot of people are seeing that as a market or as a space where, you know, they could play in. There's a lot of food that goes to waste. As a farmer, as a supplier, I work with a network of a lot of farmers in the rural area. In 2-3 days, it's gone off. Absolutely nothing that can be done. Farmers have lost their income. So we need, you know, to solve for such things. We need to say where the food that gets wasted every single day on the farms, on the retail shelves, in those trucks that get rejected because they stick thermometers inside our crates. And if the temperature is not matching to the fridge in the store or to whole week, you know, on that corner, because she doesn't have a fridge. But we're not saying corner, because she doesn't have a fridge. But we're not saying what else can we give her? Can't we give her sachets of just dried mangoes, dried stuff, you know, that still have the same nutritional benefits, you know, that communities can be faced with. Then, a report comes out, we're surprised that there's malnutrition, we're surprised that there's stunting in communities. I mean, I'm here in Johannesburg, happens in pack houses. Yeah. You call this mama that lives in a shack to come and pack these cherry tomatoes, and you telling her, this one can go in, throw it away. Like, what? I don't even have food in my own house, but you can't even give it to me after work. It's gone. You throw it, it's not meeting the spec, in the bin. And it actually gets crushed because they don't want anybody picking it up. Gets crushed, and maybe the pig farmers can come collect the waste. But it basically gets in, they really stamp it and crush it, or it goes into the compost heap. So it's no one is really pushing for it, not politicians. No one comes and say, you know, hey, it's voting season, election time, we have hunger issues that we need to solve for. It honestly, I haven't seen it happen at that level, you know. It's always at, you know, a farmer level. I work with a couple of companies that rescue food, you know, it's called a company called One Farm Share. So they get funded by companies like Standard Bank to buy food that doesn't meet spec from farmers and to donate it, you know. But even in that case, it's specific things. It has to be things that can last. Potatoes, beetroots, pumpkins, you know. We just all trying to, yes, we see the global standards. Yes, they are solving for themselves. They are solving for us to be able to bring food to them. But this is cute food. Then what happens to the other food? You know, that doesn't, we were doing for a burger company that wanted the tomatoes in a certain diameter so they can fit in a burger roll. That's it, that's all. It mustn't protrude. Then the burger, you're not going to buy the burger. That's the assumption. And that's what gets punted right in our brains to say, if it's looking like this, it's wrong, don't take it, complain, you know. Yeah. But it's still, is it rotten? No, it's not, you know. So they will come and measure. They literally will give it, because now you can't afford to buy the chemicals, or you don't want to really spray a lot. And they can meet the spec that you are servicing, right? Otherwise, you're going to be left with a lot of small ones that no one wants to take. And unfortunately, this has also gone to our townships, to our hawkers, to the very same people that we're trying to solve like hunger for. Now it's like, but ZZ2 doesn't give a tomato that looks like that. You know what I mean? So we need to educate as well our people. There's absolutely nothing wrong with a tomato that has a black dot. It's still fit for consumption. But unfortunately, the big corporates, the big retailers are out there feeding us the adverts feeding us everything, and that trickles down to even my 3-year-old. Like, I don't want to, something is very wrong with, or it fell on the ground. What do you mean? Food comes from the soil. Eat. You know? So we have to educate, educate, and educate some more.
Yeah, thank you so much, Lieko, for that. I mean, that was quite almost tear-jerking for me, especially when you talk about primarily the bodies that work the fields, and thinking from an entire Nexus perspective. I'm also thinking about the bodies that work the mines to harvest the energy as well, and these to you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Makoni, for that. We really appreciate it. I just would like to call out I just want to give you guys something before you leave, but I just want to call out Dr. Love quickly. We would like to give Dr. Love, we have 5 minutes. Dr. Love? Dr. Love, presentation.
Hi, my name is Nnamdi Umugo. I'm the director for the Center for Cyber-Physical Food, Energy and Water Systems at the University.
No? Dr. Love. Okay, next we're going to have just a brief presentation from Dr. Love and Mr. Lechau, both from University of Johannesburg. They're going to be just giving us a quick presentation on their MSc in Energy Poverty Alleviation Technologies. So we are just cognizant of time, and this will be our closing presentation, and then we'll follow up with Prof. Mwili with the closing. So thank you, guys.
Why don't you take that mic? Good day, everyone. My name is Tokologo Mtlokolachau. So I will be doing the presentation about an info day, about the project that me and Dr. Love that we are currently working on. So the project is a master's course that we actually really wanted to get implemented in South Africa. And then University of Johannesburg is going to be the first university in South Africa to implement the course. So on this day, we love to make an info day to the students and also those who are in corporate to let them know about the project that we are currently working on, which is the Masters in Poverty Alleviation Technology. So an overview of the project is to address the energy poverty which is in South Africa. So energy poverty is expressed as the inability of households to have adequate and reliable energy from their day-to-day needs like heating, cooking, and lighting. So, for example, where I come from, so most of the time we actually really go to the forest to get firewood so that we can do the cooking and also heating up. So most of the time we only use lighting only, just for electricity. So components of energy poverty entails low household income, high growing energy, and inefficient energy performance of building concerning thermal insulation system and equipment. So according to the Sustainable Energy Africa, when a household spends less than 10% of their energy, of electricity, it's regarded as poor. So on this project, we actually really want to inform the students about the master's program that's going to be implemented at the University of Johannesburg in 26. The fact about energy poverty in South Africa, so in South Africa, 27%, if it's spent on energy, it's spent on energy, is regarded as someone who's poor. So 43% of South African household, and also is classified as energy poor. So approximately 2.5 million rural and urban households in South Africa are not expected to the national electricity grid. So the aim of this project actually is to design and also develop a master's course in the field of poverty alleviation technology in South Africa. So UJ is not just only the university that is currently working on the project. So we do have partners. So our partners, some of them are the University of Venda, which is in Limpopo, University of KwaZulu-Natal, which is in KZN, University of Fort Hare, which is in Eastern Cape, Metropolitan College, I hope you can see it that side. So Metropolitan College, which is in Greece, and Red Lab, which is a private company, which is also in Greece. So University of West Atlantic, which is also in Greece, and the University of Corsica, which is in France. So we actually really love to let students know about the course and inform others about the course which is going to be offered at the University of Johannesburg. So I think my colleague will continue from here.
Thank you very much, Mr. Tike. Good afternoon, everyone, once again. My name is David Love Okpoyemi. Just like my colleague said, the MSc program is a product of the FIA project, which is currently being run by the University of Johannesburg as a coordinator with other 7 partners in France, Greece, and in South Africa. So majorly, this project is to develop a curriculum for MSc program in energy poverty alleviation. And also we have an internship aspect of the project also. And also there's going to be a FIA project lab that addresses some issues affecting energy poverty in South Africa. We have 11 modules that this project is currently working on. And this is before the University of Johannesburg for accreditation. We have 11 modules which is going to focus on energy technologies, more than renewable energy technologies, from solar energy to wind energy. We're also going to be looking into energy systems, the economics of energy, the energy poverty policies also, some of the things we are going to be looking at from this particular MSc. And our target for this MSc is students that are within engineering field, environmental science field, electrical energy space, and also students that are also within the renewable energy, because we understand the fact that many energy poverty, just like my colleague said, deals with income aspect of energy and also the supply of electricity itself. So once you look at both, you are looking at the prices, you are looking at the affordability, you are looking at the supply of energy, and you're also looking at also the efficiency of energy. And that is what this MSc program is going to be focused on. So we just want to get your feedback on this project, and also for mostly students that are here, we want to get your feedback. We want to know your knowledge, your thought about this program, and also we'll also reach out to you. And secondly, also for those of us that are in the energy space, I also want to get your input also on this project to see how we can network for internship. So we just need 2 minutes of your time to just scan the code in front of you, and then we'll get back to you. Thank you very much. Just 2 minutes, please. Just scan. By the time you scan, you are going to choose either you're a government worker, student, or also in the business sector. Just 2 minutes, please. Just scan this code. If you're an industry partner, please choose. If you're academics or student, please choose one. If you are government institutions, please select that also. Whatever you select is going to take you to a different aspect of the categories that we have here, because we are targeting different goals here. One is to inform the student about this MSc that is going to run from 2026, as we are currently through the accreditation stage, and also to seek for internship with our industrial partners at this event. One more minute, please. Choose the University of Johannesburg. In the institution, the University of Johannesburg, because our other partners also, UKZN, Univen, and UFH also are also conducting their own info day. Yeah, it's just one. It's just one. Okay, for the institution. Thank you.
Thank you for that. I hope you guys, there's some interested parties there. I would just like to please invite our host to give us some closing remarks. Professor Muli, can you please come and close the event for us? Thank you.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone, once more. To everyone that has been part of this, right? Because after reflections, you are able to, in a sense, navigate along your journey in a much more effective way, right? And avoiding the various pitfalls that have been made. I want to thank, in absentia, Professor Bokoro, who represented the Executive Dean. I want to also thank the various keynote speakers, Mr. Bernard Mahoro and Dr. Hashal Dayal for their perspectives, right, to our very distinguished panelists, and then the various moderators, Dr. Eric and Dr. Vuyiswer. Thank you so very much. Today's dialogue has reinforced why we did set up this center, right, essentially to show how to bridge the gap between academic research and practical solutions, and that's why we deliberately did not want to present academic research here, right? We wanted you to hear from those that have their boots on the ground in the field, right? Basically, as we look ahead, I want to invite everyone to collaborate with us, right? We have just presented the MSc program that we are working on. There will be various elements in and around the food, energy, water nexus embedded within that program. Right. We also are very active with research collaborations and community projects. Several of the videos that we'll play once we round up this event would also detail a few of our activities. There's the Limpopo Emerging Agro-Processors project that we are working on with key partners, right? Essentially leveraging technology to solve communal problems. Before we part, I want to challenge us, right? We need to, academia, we might have all of the answers. We might think we have all of the answers, but like as colleagues also said, when you get to the real world, you see issues that the textbook might have, you might not have noticed during your research. So it's important that industry and academia work together, right? And that's why we have this event. And then we do not want the conversation to end today, right? We would plead and crave your indulgence for further discussions, for further collaborations, and for further interactions. And together we can build a more sustainable and prosperous South Africa. Thank you. project that we are working on, amongst other projects in the center. Now, this is a project that essentially tries to develop a smart agro-processing facility for rural agro-processors. Essentially, we are developing that you can scan the product and then you can now get relevant information about the product. Taking together these technologies would ensure now that consumer confidence is increased concerning the production of these technologies, and then rural agro-processors will be able to access the wider market. Hi, my name is
Our scanners to scan and track the product across the supply chain. Now, let's demonstrate our verification process. Watch as I scan this Amasi product using our barcode scanner. Notice the confirmation beep. This indicates successful scanning. With a simple click on Verify, we can access blockchain contract ID. For something truly innovative, our computer vision system. Notice how the AI tracks facial movements and hand gestures. This creates a bridge between the physical and virtual worlds. Let's verify this on the Hedera blockchain. By copying the transaction link to the HashScan Explorer, we can see this product's journey's complete, immutable record. We can interact with the interface by bringing our thumb and index fingers together. Watch as we scan the QR code using just hand gestures. The system recognizes these movements and responds accordingly. Now that the QR code has been scanned, it gives us a prompt telling us the QR code scan was successful and data processed by the AI are now available. We can now interact with this virtual world. Watch as I click on the virtual world and get responses. I can not only use my right hand, but I can likewise use my left hand. Let's take it to yet another level of innovation. Our Sitem can perform real-time data analysis of parameters. Let's put it to the test. Watch as I plot a bar chart with different colors, interact with the charts, and get average of temperature all in real time. Our system also features voice command capabilities, which are perfect for busy production environments where hands-free operation is essential.
Explorer.
Opening the Explorer now. Kindly be patient while I initialize window. You are now exploring CCP-FE. View HashScan report.
So this project is one of the many projects that we are currently involved with at the center. At the moment, we are about deploying the demonstration you have just seen with colleagues from the Department of Food Technology, Biotechnology and Food Technology, and the Department of Transport and Supply Chain Management, that's Professor Adebo and Dr. Taba respectively, with a group of emerging agro-processors in Limpopo called the Limpopo Emerging Agro-Processor Program. So it's essentially a shared facility that would enable rural agro-processors to produce their agro products in a smart, controlled environment, and then they would now be able to leverage all of the technologies you have just seen to ensure now that there is increased consumer confidence, and then they satisfy all the food safety regulations. Thank you.
Today we're at the official launch of the Food Trolley application, which was proudly designed by UJ Blockchain. We have designed an application that assists students to collect their parcels in a quicker manner, and we are also assisting the SDP to ensure that there cannot be any duplicate collections by students or anybody trying to collect more than the one that is allocated per student. The launch is about to start. The students are about to start collecting food parcels with the application. Some good positive feedback. We also have some technical glitches. However, the majority feedback is good, and we are quite proud that of this application.
The app is now like more convenient and it's very easy to use. I was able to log in at easy. There was no problem. I was able to order within minutes. It was approved. I was like, we are good.
It was quick to register on the app, the website, and I like it because usually we would wait like 3 hours on the queue, but now I was assisted like an hour.
Oh wow.
An hour makes sense.
So it improved the wait time.
Yes,
3 to 1 hour.
Yes, I'm actually happy.
Oh, great, great, great.
Lunchtime, we can go. We'll go. I think it's down. We'll go down to the venue for lunch.